All right, everyone. I'm going to be recording the match for Patrick and Ben. This is actually my first experience doing commentating, but it should be a good match. They both have strong-looking teams. Be interesting to see what four they end up bringing each for the first match. If you're new to our draft league, our battles are going to be in best 2 of 3 format, but we do play the third match just because it might end up mattering for point differentials later when we do top 4 seeding for playoffs. All right, looks like they've locked in. So we've got Incineroar and Sylveon facing off versus King Gambit and Sableye, but King Gambit gets that Defiant boost right off the rip. The King Gambit and Incineroar matchup could be very interesting. Sometimes King Gambits run low kick as fighting coverage for other King Gambits and for the Incineroar matchup. The plus run with a +1 that could actually be quite dangerous for that Incineroar to sit out there, especially if it can't pick up a one-hit KO or a combo KO with Sylveon. Interesting to see what they do. Okay, Sableye is starting off with the Gravity. Flare Blitz picks up big damage in the King Gambit, but does not knock it out. Setting up Light Screen, and then King Gambit following up with a Kowtow Cleave. Does a lot of damage into Incineroar, but does not pick up the knockout either. See if Patrick leaves Incineroar on the field, as there is always the chance Ben could go for Sucker Punch with King Gambit. That could potentially pick up the Incineroar knockout. Ooh, Ben Encore locking Sylveon. May have to switch Sylveon out now. And there we do see the Sucker Punch coming out. And Incineroar goes down. See how Patrick adjusts here. He brings out the Arcanine. And the Intimidate is going to give King Gambit another +2. Ooh, Quash so that Arcanine moves last, coming out from Sableye. Still locked into Light Screen. And ooh, big damage from that Kowtow Cleave. My goodness, Ben is definitely taking an early lead in this one. And then Aegislash. Aegislash looks like it's going for Poltergeist into Sableye. Sableye going for knockoff, and we'll see it knocks off Aegislash's Citrus Berry. Iron Head goes out into Sylveon. And I gotta say, this is not looking like it's going to be recoverable for Patrick. One Sucker Punch should do it from Aegislash. And then also, if he were to go for King's Shield and King Gambit attacked into it, his attack would get dropped by 1, but then Defiant would kick back in and he'd come back with a +2. His Shadow Sneak come in and knock out the Sableye, but I'm expecting we'll see Kowtow come out of Gambit. Oh, Sucker Punch. Okay. Yeah, that's one of those speed interactions you gotta watch for. Now, he could go for Shadow Sneak again into Alakazam to do damage. Not sure if it would pick up the knockout, depending on how they're trained. But he will have to use, and there we go, we see it. Shadow Sneak into Alakazam does pick up the knockout, so that must be a pretty frail Alakazam. But he should... Oh, he's still Sucker Punching. Okay. Aegislash is holding on for dear life. It's like they're coming down to the mind game with Shadow Sneak and Sucker Punch. Patrick can't really afford to stop using Shadow Sneak in case he gets Sucker Punched, but at the same time, if... Oh, and we see a stance change coming out. So still Sucker Punch, but when you can put out pressure with your other Mon, you can afford to Sucker Punch. All right, so Aegislash is now in its defensive form, so its attack and defenses would have swapped, and it's not enough to survive. Not enough to survive, and Ben takes game 1. Well played, gentlemen. Well played. Let's see how Patrick adjusts in game 2. Alright, looks like they are about to get going. We are going to spectate, and here we go. And that Sableye is so tricky. It's already revealed Gravity and Encore, as well as Knockoff. Don't think we saw its 4th move though, so I think if I'm Patrick, what I'd want to see from Patrick is, you know, Aegislash and Incineroar both kind of gave King Gambit, you know, buffs rather than kind of slowing it down. Aegislash and Bloodsdale versus Sableye and Flapple. So we might see a Gravity Grab Apple strategy come out, especially since Grab Apple should be super effective in the Mudsdale. If ever there was a time to use Gravity and Grab Apple, this would be the turn to do it. So it looks like Aegislash is moving first and is putting out pressure into the Sableye, hitting it with Shadow Sneak, taking off a little over what looked like a third of its health. Oh, we see, there it is. There's Grab Apple. It's a nice animation. And that did big damage into Mudsdale. Mudsdale goes down. Okay, so Incineroar comes out from Patrick's side. Intimidate will go off into Sableye and into Flapple. Both are sitting at -1 attack now. We might see maybe a Fake Out coming out. Nope, Encore. Encore into Shadow Sneak, which is not the worst thing because you're still getting offensive pressure, but you'd probably prefer to be using something like Poltergeist or maybe Iron Head. What will Incineroar do? Incin's defense falls. That could come back later. Flare Blitz into the Flapple does take it out. And there was a crit as well. Incineroar now look to be maybe just over a third of its HP left. How will Patrick preserve it? And what will Ben send out to replace Flapple? Have to imagine the King Gambit somewhere there in the back. He brought the Alakazam last time, but with knowing that Alakazam can get one-shot by Shadow Sneak, will Ben have brought it? Oh, nope, and we're seeing Sinistcha come out. Sinistcha brings Sableye back up to full health, and Ben now has 2 Pokemon at full HP on the field. Aegislash is Encore locked for 1 to 2 more turns, and Incineroar is only got about a third of its HP remaining. Shadow Sneak goes out into the Sinistcha, does little more than a third of its health. Incineroar brings out Dark Pulse. Interesting, running a special move on Incineroar. I wonder what the reasoning behind that was. If he had calced for something specific, or... And the flinch does come out. Sinistra's down to just over... Oh, and Citrus Berry's popping, so it goes back over half of its health now. And Flare Blitz goes out and does big damage into Sinistra. Sinistra goes down, but will Incin go down to its own recoil? And it does. Incineroar does go down to its own recoil, so it's now 2-2. And it sends out Alakazam. Okay, we know from the other match that Alakazam is able to be one-shot by Shadow Sneak, which Aegislash is still locked into. So seems like Patrick might just want to go ahead and click Shadow Sneak into Alakazam and take it out. See if Ben has a trick up his sleeve. Trace comes out and gets into Lightning Rod. And Shadow Sneak does major damage, but crucially does not take out Mega Alakazam. Quash failed into Aegis Slash. Because Aegis Slash had already Shadow Snuck. And then Rhyperior uses Earthquake. That should pick up the KO into Alakazam, and it does. It's coming down now to Sableye versus Rhyperior, and offensively, Rhyperior should have the edge here. Rhyperior has a full HP. Sableye has less than half. See Knockoff come off from Sableye, knocks off his Focus Sash. And Rhyperior is using Rock Blast, which only hit twice, but if it would have hit that third time, looks like it would have picked up the KO. This may very well be the final turn of this battle. Sableye knocks off again. Does chip damage, and Rock Blast misses. Sableye slowly healing back HP. 1/16 a turn. 2 turns of heal has brought it back out of the red. It's got just slightly less than a third of its HP. Rhyperior using Earthquake. He's not trying to risk Rock Blast missing again. And that does it. That is enough to bring down Sableye. Patrick takes game 2, and we are sitting at 1-1. They will be moving on to game 3 now. Right, be interesting to see how adjustments are made from both sides now that they're sitting at 1-1. If I was Ben, I'd be thinking about bringing King Gambit again. It was such a force for me in the first game that I feel like it'd be hard to justify not bringing it. So we've got an Alakazam Sableye lead versus Sylveon and Aegis Slash. Initially, if I'm Patrick, I might actually be happy with this lead. Sylveon pressures super effective fairy damage into Sableye, and then Aegis Slash, we've already seen, is able to pick up Alakazam with a Shadow Sneak if it doesn't Mega Evolve. Have to imagine it will, though, since there's not anything else on Ben's team that he brought that is capable of Mega Evolving. Except for Sableye, but we already know its item is Leftovers. Or I suppose Altaria as well, but we haven't seen that come out yet either, so. Okay, so he does swap the Alakazam into King Gambit. And Sylveon leading off with big damage with Hyper Beam. Will that KO? It does KO, but now Sylveon is going to be a sitting duck for the next turn. Interestingly enough, it looks like Sableye didn't even go for a supporting move. It looks like it was maybe going for knockoff then. And King Gambit took decent chip damage. I'd say maybe about 25%. Alakazam is back out. Now we know that if Patrick were to go for Shadow Sneak and Ben were to click Sucker Punch, that the Shadow Sneak would go first. Likely that we might see Kowtow come out if he's trying to take out the Aegis Slash. Or if Alakazam is running Shadow Ball, we might see that. Alakazam traces Pixelate when it Mega Evolves, and there's the Shadow Ball. That may very well KO. Yep, and it does KO the Aegislash. Aegislash goes down, and Sylveon is still recharging this turn. So if Ben were to have Iron-Headed, and he did, that's going to do huge damage. Okay, it's a double knockout for Ben. Now Patrick is down to his final 2. Ben is, it's 2-3 now. Ben is in the lead with 3. And we see Incineroar come out. That's going to bring King Gambit to +1 attack after Defiant and Intimidate both activate. And we see Rhyperior as well. Rhyperior and Incineroar are both capable of doing super effective damage into King Gambit. Incineroar capable of doing super effective damage into the Alakazam. We saw Dark Pulse on Incineroar last game. Will we see Dark Pulse go into Alakazam, or will Patrick try and focus down the King Gambit? King Gambit Sucker Punch into Incineroar. That did a lot of damage. Definitely can see that +1 coming out of it. Alakazam Shadow Balling into Rhyperior, doing well over half. Incineroar's Dark Pulse, bringing Alakazam just under half. And Rhyperior substitutes. Looks like it just barely had enough to make a substitute. Haven't seen a lot of protecting in this one. Wonder if Ben will target down Rhyperior to break that substitute, and then risk it being King Gambit versus Ensign in the end game, or looks like Shadow Ball comes out into Ensign, bringing it down to just over a third, but Flare Blitz is going off into the King Gambit, just barely does not get the knockout, leaves it with 15. Incineroar's recoil brings it down to 19, and King Gambit will kowtow cleave the Incineroar and knock it out. Now, Patrick, if he selected Earthquake, has a chance to knock out both Mons here, as Alakazam is frail. We see Rock Blast come out, and it only hits twice. That's unfortunate. As that leaves, I believe that leaves the door open for Ben to win. All Ben has to do is Shadow Ball the substitute away, and then Sucker Punch into Rhyperior, and that should be game. Have not seen any defensive moves from Rhyperior, so Sucker Punch should be able to go off. Or, speed-wise, he could be just clicking Kowtow. Oh, yep, and there goes the Kowtow, and that will take out the Rhyperior. And that is game 3. Ben takes the set, 2-1. Well played, gentlemen. Well played.